All beings. All beings.
Yeah! Welcome back to Cab Saturday, baby, because you know where we're going. We're going to France to hang out with my man Baptiste. But before we get to him, the special guest, let's say hello to the brother like no other. My man, the executive producer, the technical director of this joint, Money Nathan. Good afternoon, sir.
Greetings, everyone. Happy Saturday. Welcome to Calling All Beings. Man, it's good to be here. Good to be here with this guy. Last time we talked with him was in September, so looking forward to catching up with him.
We were due. Ironically, I was at Barber at Kayla's race that weekend, and now they've moved Barber to May, so next weekend she'll be at Barber. But I don't know. Maybe I will make the trip up there. But before we go any further, let's say hello to my sister from another mister, the centering cam of this joint, the soul of it. Just let your soul glow, Deb.
Bonjour.
Everybody on here got a sense of humor, man. It's not just me, people.
We're trying,
I can be serious. I can be serious, right, Nathan?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
So serious.
There have been those times. So anyway, this gentleman we're about to bring on. Well, you know what? Before we even do that, let's do this, man. Oh wait, that was. Here we go. There we go. You catching it, Nathan?
I can see our guest laughing in the background off stage, so this is.
Je t'aime, Baptiste.
Yeah. That is what's up. All right, so
Love it.
This brother, we endeavor to. There's so many of us that are engaged in this topic from the U.S. and the U.K., and we've made strong connections there. Thank God. But you know what? There are people from many, many other countries that are into this topic. Thankfully, James Fox brought to us about the Brazilians and has made inroads there so that they know that we're listening to them and we're watching them and they're engaged. And Vinny, obviously, with the Colombians, with Ash and Priscilla was just down there with them. Well, this gentleman right here has an endeavor that hopes to bring data from many, many sources and funnel them into a central database where our data set is not going to be, well, this country has this and that country has that and this country has this. So I was honored that he made his presentation. I got to see what it was all about. He became pretty well known after he had Lou Elizondo on his program. So he's a brilliant man from France. He's more well-spoken than me, but then again, I guess probably 3/4 of France is. So, party people, put those hands together for Baptiste Friscourt!
Hello, thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Can I get an amen for Baptiste?
Amen. Welcome back.
Yeah! What's going on, brother?
I'm sending you a real French tune, so you can lift off with that one.
Okay, please do that. Yeah. Well, you missed it last week. I played two. What are those artists that I played? They're sort of electronic music. Would we call that, Nathan? I played the last
Daft
two
Punk?
times. Huh?
Daft Punk?
No. I'll send them to you. But I absolutely love these artists, and I believe that they're both French. And it's sort of it has singing in there, but I believe it's all electronic music. I don't care. It sounds damn good. That's all I need to know about it. Anyway, welcome, brother. How are you?
I'm fine. Thank you very much for having me on the greatest show on YouTube.
Thank you so much.
I get it. Hey, man, right there.
Man, appreciate that. This rides on us, Baptiste. We appreciate that.
No, and I speak by heart. I feel like home here, so thank you very much.
Awesome.
Yeah. So basically, that one of the reasons that I'm glad we do. Nathan will always ask me, we've had this particular individual on. We'd like to bring them back on. So we do like to have guests back on that we've had. But This particular time is, that you made a presentation about this endeavor that you have,
Yeah.
and you know what? Before we even get into that, I'm really curious to ask you is um is there something like that happened in your past that has made you this sort of passionate disclosure advocate that you are? What was that beginning?
No, not at all. Quite the opposite. I have no taste for that field in particular. I like knowledge. I like to learn things, but from any field. What pointed me towards UFOs? What was my students? So every couple, I'm a teacher. I'm an art teacher by trade, and every couple of years I update my lessons. And to update my lessons, I ask them what they are interested in. And in exchange, I offer them that they can ask me any question they want, and I will find the answer. And the last time I did that was in 2017, September 2017, and 80% of my students, so that's around 300 students, upvoted the question, what are UFOs? So I looked around in the literature I could find, which was dirt. And I said to them, it's nothing, just hallucinatory pose of a brain. Don't worry about it. And then a couple of months later, December 2017, the New York Times published its articles. So I had to go back to them and say, so I'm very sorry, I was mistaken. There is a reality on that phenomenon, and I will endeavor to find the answer because now I'm humiliated.
Amazing.
But that puts you in like the overwhelming majority of the world's population felt that way. And it's only a seminal event that changed that. And it was a tangent of the exact same event. Not that changed my belief that it was there, but sort of empowered me to want to talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
So
Absolutely.
I'm gonna pass you to Money Nathan, but before I do, I want to welcome back somebody who was sick in the hospital. She is our chat moderator, Julie, the Jewel of Indiana, as we call her, who happens to be residing in Alabama. So, Julie, welcome back. Thank you so much. We're so glad that you're back, and I hope to speak with you soon. I'm glad that you smell bread. I wish I was eating it. Anyway, let me pass you over to the capable hands of the co-conspirator of CAB, Money Nathan.
Awesome. So Baptiste, the last time we chatted with you was in September, so it's been quite a long time.
Oh, yes.
And every day I feel like you're posting stuff, you're sharing stuff. To me, you seem like a tireless researcher, but what's kind of going on since then? What have you been working on, and what's on the horizon? We'd love to hear about it.
Yeah, sure. So in France, we have a public office about UFOs that is financed by the French NASA. It's called the GEPAN. The senior researcher of GEPAN decided to create in its own structure, which is called UAP Check. The idea is to give the software it designed inside the GEPAN accessible to the public. But around that, we want to build an all-encompassing project to work on increasing the level of quality of information regarding UAPs. So what I've been doing on Twitter, and it was quite an extensive work, was to design a way to find any piece of information as soon as it was published and to find ways of automating that work. So we are creating now a software that is doing automatically that work of looking in the internet for reliable sources and then pull up the information automatically. So you don't have to go in 10 different news sites and they are all vying for to be the first to break the information. Whoever breaks the information, we will relay the information. So that's the main point of that part of the software. Another part will be a personal research. So you can do that when you have reliable sources, but when you have an information that emerges from somebody unknown or somebody new, the software can't recognize it. So we will have a team that is designed to do my work, that is to look for reliable and interesting piece of information, and at a planetary level. Right now, as the search engine is designed to observe the language you are using. It's limiting the answers to the language you are looking for. So there is a whole work to do with different types of keywords in all the languages we use on Earth to look for information everywhere. And we can then also do that in the past. So once we will have to teach the software to do that at the present time, we can ask him to do that in the past and to look for specific areas of information. So for example, any article that was between the 15 and 17 April 1974 with the word UFO inside on 10 kilometers around that town, and it will look for that information. So that's the idea of that tool. So not only find the information, but find the information everywhere and at every time.
Wow. Wow.
That won't be enough. So,
That's incredible. So you've been kind of testing it out. So it sounds like the things that I see you posting and sharing, you're pulling from that engine that is in development, that it's already working in some respect.
No, I'm the test group. So
Okay.
I'm trying my hardest to beat it, and he's trying his hardest to beat me.
Wow.
And we are fine-tuning it as long as there is a difference between the two.
Incredible.
So far, this sounds like MotoGP today with Pecca Bagnaia and Marc Marquez trying his hardest to beat one another and touching one another up a little bit. Deb, you as a person who researches data and looks for archives and places where information is sort of hidden, and you found so much of it, I have to think that this is pretty intriguing for you.
Yeah, actually, one thing I've discovered is that once a topic gets put out in the media, it like almost pollutes Google. Like if you go to Google, you have to go like 10 pages in before you're getting that same thing over and over. I cannot tell you how many gimbal pictures I have seen doing searches. I'm very tired of it. What happens though when I find things is it's like a backdoor. Like sometimes there's a website that's not even linking something, but still has that on a page, and you find something. So I've been really on top of what Baptiste has been putting out, because he's finding things that are much harder to find with Google right now, and it's amazing. So I really appreciate your work, Baptiste.
Oh, thank you very much. But it's a tremendous work made by Michael Vaillant to design the whole search engine by himself. I'm only the test group in the operation.
And I wanted to come back to one thing that you said, just so that I have the clarity on it. So did I understand you correctly that the UAP check is a product of Japan? Like that it's...
No, not at all. Michael Vaillant made in large parts the technology that is used by the Japan, but the technology is his. So now we are offering that technology to everyone that wants to use it. And the search engine is only a small part of the technology we have.
Got it. Wow.
A shout out to All Things Unexplained. Our new homies are going to do that big roundtable with us. These guys are so cool. And in July, they're going to do a mega roundtable with Cab, and hopefully there'll be like 10 of us on there. It'll be ridiculous. And we're all going to have a topic, so everyone's going to have to brainstorm for that episode. So what's up, party people? Thank y'all. We appreciate what y'all do as well. Very excited about that. And Nathan, man, you got to talk to Noctivigent, man. We got to get one with them too, man.
Absolutely. Those guys are awesome. Yeah.
They were so cool. Baptiste, so can you set something that you did for me was to say, okay, if somebody, I'm a person, and well, obviously you guys knew that I was probably a person anyway, although there's some question.
I have some doubts. I'm pointing some doubts here. Where is it? Is here? I have some doubts here on the screen.
We do. Yeah.
I think there is doubt, but you ran through for me what it would be like if someone has a particular encounter and they want to report it, and what happens at that point. So I think that's a good jumping off point to speak about the technology.
Yeah, sure. So that's another part of the technology made by Michael Vaillant. Inside the Japan, they designed a method to cancel out bias. So the problem you have when you are working with human intelligence is that humans have an ego, humans have a brain, and they interpret data. So, and what you want is the pure data. So you need to have a whole system that seems simple from the outside, but is designed to cancel out any input you could add to a signal. So we can extract only the information we need to be sure of what you saw. The idea is that the software does that automatically and is perfectly transparent. So it shows you what is the information collected and what it compares it to, so the witness can choose where the software is agreeing with him or not, and the percentile of correspondence between what the witness saw and describes and what the database can explain. And then if the witness thinks nothing fits the description of the software, he can edit a full witness report and send it to a ground investigator, and the ground investigator has a full cancel out bias report with the sighting and every piece of information we could gather.
It's a filter, basically, so that they can say, they may legitimately think, I don't know what this is, and it could be something. And for that person, this is going to offer them an opportunity for a prosaic explanation for what they saw before they say, I saw something that is 100% anomalous. Because we think that everybody knows, I think there is a portion. I think that there is something in all of us, and depending upon the length and breadth and the characteristics of what you're looking at, can discern this is not something that is man-made. This is something that is, I'm looking at something that's, that's how I felt when I had my sighting when I was a teenager, and I had no aviation knowledge, back then, other than that I loved aviation. Some people, this is going to offer them that opportunity to see, because they may not have decided what it is yet. Whereas others may see something and be like, "Oh, this is stone cold. This is close encounters." Go ahead, my friend. I'm sorry.
That's very, no, I interrupted. That's very true, because we have the statistical data from the witnesses, because we have been doing that since 1977. So when you have the data from the witness, it's accurate at 90%. There is 10% that is a mistake from the specific eyesight of the witness or the specific lighting of the time of the day. But 90% is true. The problem is that after the data that is recorded by the brain, the mind trying to explain it. It looks like a plane, it looks like a balloon. And that's when you have a modification of the memory to fit what the brain thinks it is, because it's simpler for the brain to cover it with a simple explanation. So the whole problem we have is to cancel out that narrative that is created by the brain to explain the phenomenon and just get back to what it looked like, but what it was.
That's amazing. Yeah, the key task here is separating the signal from all of the noise. And there undoubtedly is a lot of noise that is out there in social media. If someone's saying they're seeing something, they're posting about it. How many videos have we all seen of someone saying they think it's something, but it's actually just the Starlink satellites crossing the sky? Something this is going to help folks eliminate that and move it to the side and leave, hopefully, the really good stuff, the truly anomalous content left for us to analyze. Now, is it one question I have for you is it like an app that will be on the phone or on a web website? How is the user interacting with UAP Check?
Sure. It's a simple form. You can go on the internet through the website, and you fill out the information. It takes between 30 seconds to 5 minutes, depending on the amount of information you collected. And then you have automatically what is the results.
Amazing. And when will it be? Is it live now? When will people be able to use it?
We are thinking the end of summer for this part of the software.
Fantastic.
Awesome. We're close.
It's already working right now. It's just very ugly. It's like Windows 95 type of tool, because we did not need to have an interface before. It was just an internal software.
Right. That's fantastic. Well, one question I have for you, I wanted you, because I know you've thought about this a little bit. So what do you think is going to happen when and if the topic becomes more mainstream? There's been a lot of folks who've kept it afloat, like our show is an example, but a very small example of keeping the interest in this topic alive. The researchers, I'm thinking of people like the David Marlers who've got tremendous archive of information about black triangles, keeping that torch, that flame alive until the wider sort of world begins to pay attention. What do you see happening when that shift occurs? Do you see kind of a handoff occurring there? Do you see a greater institutional investment and awareness? Is the role that kind of these small players have played, will it just kind of fade away, or will there be a partnership? What do you think will happen there?
I think there will be an historical retcon. I think that the only way that society will accept it is to say that they always accepted it, and it was an illusion that there was stigma. It's what happens when you have scientific revolution. All of a sudden, one day, everybody agrees that there is a new paradigm in town, and it was just the old days where people didn't think that way. So that's what will happen, and there won't be any trouble. It will just be a shift for those like us that have been aware of what it was in the time. But for most of the people, that subject that doesn't even exist in their reality. It's just that it will pop inside their reality one day.
The response, well, of course it's true. I always knew that was true. Right?
That's right. I think I hear that now from people that like about 24 months ago were like, oh,
Absolutely.
Little green man.
Absolutely. Stigma, to give you an idea, a statistical point, 1 year and a half ago, I could concentrate every piece of reliable information in 10 tweets per week. I'm at 25 tweets a day.
It's
tremendous. It's tremendous.
Can't
There's
keep
so
up.
much more out there. I want to get a question in from the chat. These are the hosts of, actually, they're the authors of, they wrote a book, The Bigfoot Influencers, and they also have a podcast, Tim and Dana. And they want to know, I'll weigh in on this too, but I want to get Baptiste. If we witness a sighting, what should we immediately write down / log about it? So what do you think that they should copy down when they see something, Baptiste?
So I will presume that they have a phone on them, because that's our situation, where everybody has a phone on themselves. So if you have a phone, you have your GPS coordinates. So you need to record your GPS. You just go to Google Maps, select your position, and record the point you create on the map. So that gives you the GPS. Then you take a picture of the whole field in front of you, centered on where you saw the point. We really need to have the field of view with the ground or pieces of buildings or trees somewhere, so we can find the reference. Don't try to estimate the elevation by yourself or the distance by yourself. The human brain is very, very bad at that. Even trained military people are very bad at that. So don't waste time doing that. Just take a picture with a whole field and pieces of ground, and in the picture you put the point where you saw it, and that's all we need as piece of information. Inside the software, you will have the same thing. You will have a map. You point the map. You draw an arrow towards the point you were looking at. You show how high was leveled your head to give us an inclination, and then the software does the cross-referencing with the databases.
That is great stuff right there, because I never really thought about that. But yeah, you need to, like you said, you need to see the area around it, and then you could zoom in and get as close as you can after you capture the area, and try to zoom in on what the object is. The other thing is you're listening for sound, and so if dirigibles don't necessarily make any sound, but then if it makes a movement that is uncharacteristic, a rapid movement in one direction or another at 90-degree angles, that's something, and you're not hearing a correlated engine noise or noise of some sort of a propulsion with it, that is something that would get my attention right away. And there's other things I'm not going to, in terms of light sources that I don't want to go into here, but anybody can reach out to me, and I can give you sort of the checklist that I would go through if I was looking at something to try to figure out if it was anomalous beyond just the gut feeling. But that's the main thing, is do I hear something, and is it moving uncharacteristically of what we call an aircraft, moving at right angles, starting and stopping quickly, and no apparent sound associated with that. So anyway.
So I would oppose to that, because there is also a counter bias. So by restricting too much the amount of information you put in, you are really limiting the number of real cases that are happening. So that's why in the software you have like 10 to 15 pages that describe the event piece by piece, so movement, size, shape, colors, movement of colors, movements of the craft, because every piece of this information is important to reach a conclusion afterwards. So it's really interesting your way of doing it when you have like 200,000 cases in a database and you want the really, really good one. You want the top 0.5% of the cases. So, and that's working. But when you're working with human intelligence, you really need to expand the funnel and then to work on each report.
You're absolutely right. I'm sort of a couple different podcasts I've been on, they ask me, what do I look for or what would I look for if I saw something to evaluate whether it was anomalous or not. But you are right. You need to widen out that funnel, capture all the data, and then let the experts go in and look at it and evaluate it and discriminate, as Nathan said, filter out the signal from the noise. So yeah, you're right. I'm thinking in a sort of a different context than.
Yeah, sure. That's two
so,
different
yeah.
methodologies for two different outputs.
Thanks. Yep. But let's go to Deb. I want to leave Deb. How you doing, girlfriend?
Yeah, I have a couple questions actually that I want to really touch on. The first is we talked about partnership and kind of making this available to the public. I know that there are countries that are just not getting recognized as they should be. Like, Mexico has a lot of stuff going on, and they have a lot of serious researchers that actually involve themselves with their governments, Chile, Peru, so it goes on and on. So I wanted to know if any of those people from those organizations are working with you on this. And the second part of that is, will the results be public also?
What type of results?
When you do all the analysis, when people are reporting, is that going to be available for people to see in return?
Okay, so for the first question, we are currently briefing every association and research group we can find about the subject and at a planetary level. That's why it's taking us so much time to reach out to everybody and to explain what we are doing to everybody, because we don't want to blindside anyone. And as you said, there are a tremendous amount of groups that are looking into it right now, and it's increasing day by day. And indeed, we have contact with almost the whole Earth at that point, and ask what it is for the results. Yes, so that's another part of the project. So in the other part of the project will be the scientific studies. So all the data we can collect from the software will be available publicly for researchers. Evidently, we will be protecting the personal information of the witness, and we will design specific tools so you can have a constant 3D map of all the sightings that are currently happening, and different tools that allows you to scroll through different periods of time and different places.
And Deb, you were mentioning you had another question. So if you have something else that you want to
Yeah,
get
the
in there
second
before we move on,
the
please.
second one was the results part, but I guess I will just throw this question out there and see how you'd handle it. A lot of people do report having personal physical experiences with UAPs, and I was just wondering if you're going to touch on that experiencer aspect or if it's just going to be about seeing the object.
So right now it's a UAP check. So we are checking what is pretty much an aerial phenomena that is flying in the environment of a witness. And we have a specificity in France. We have one association that is called the CERO, CERO, that is giving psychological support to close encounter witness. And we have a world laboratory that is called the CIRCE, CIRCEE, that is a state-funded laboratory that is giving also psychological help to close encounter witness.
I love that. So basically, you're not set up yet to deal with experiencers and that sort of the narratives and the unpacking of those sorts of experiences. Do I have that right?
That's not where our expertise lies.
Okay. Oh, there you go. I mean, that's a great thing right there. So I was going to ask you, Baptiste, in terms of say this, taking the temperature of France, and one of the reasons is because you are sort of our link to France at this point. I hope that some of your colleagues and compatriots and friends will come out, and by the way, you can sort of send them over to speak with us, because we do want to get more engagement from people, like I said, beyond just the couple of countries that are contributing, and we know that they're out there. But where do you see your country, France, at right now in terms of this topic? When you speak in public about it with or in parties or so forth with colleagues, what's your assessment of what we're looking at now?
So it changed a lot in the last 2 years. You really notice. So in every newspaper that is publishing an article about it, there is no jokes anymore, nowhere to be found. So, and it's quite impressive, because as French, we love to ridicule. So it's very, very extreme to see that in just 2 years, all the jokes disappeared. And you only hear them when somebody is asked on the TV, and he hasn't prepared an answer, so he tries to cancel out the question by a joke. But even then, the journalist launches back the question and wants to have an answer. So it's quite interesting. But we don't have the culture you have in the US, where we talk about problems. So as long as the US will be the one talking out loud about it, there is just no interest for France to talk about it, because you are taking all the risk and all the hit for it. So we will be following, as long as you are willing to talk about it. If you reach out disclosure by yourself, very well. And then if you fail, we will take the next position, and we will try to reach out to disclosure.
Yeah, this is very much if you had a very, very similar design to the Wright brothers and you were aware of it, it's like, hey, let them go out and flight test out on Kill Devil Hills, see how they do, and if then they do, we'll go run our test. Yeah,
you also need to consider that we are a different country, so we are not sure that all the craft we are witnessing aren't American prototypes of a breakthrough technology. So we have to be cautious. We have to be cautious too.
Yeah, no, I've spoke at length about sovereignty. A lot of people think that the United States is controlling what other countries are doing, and that really belies the notion of sovereignty, particularly unless you have a country whose their domestic product is dependent upon U.S. aid to survive, and France is certainly not one of those countries. So I have a question from the Arrow gentleman here, and this one is off the cuff, has nothing to do with what we've been talking about today, but I think we can get Baptiste and everybody else to react to it. Is Bob Lazar's UFO story true or false? Baptiste, you first, and then we'll go Deb and Nathan, or Nathan and Deb.
It's unproven.
What do your gut feeling, your opinion?
I don't care about it. It's unproven. There is nothing to prove it.
Oh, very data driven. I love it. Look at this, man. We got another TJ Allard in here. Nathan.
Yeah, I mean, it's fascinating, right? The George Knapp, the story in the 80s, and some facts that later turned out to be true, but he's certainly a super controversial figure. So I think, as Baptiste is alluding to, there's so much. There's so many confusing aspects to the story that it's difficult to say this has a lot of, at least right now, a lot of validity that we can kind of hang our hat on that. Like a lot of things in UFO lore, it is fraught with some confusing elements that make it difficult to parse truth from fiction. So I don't know. It'll be interesting. And certainly, I will credit Bob Lazar for getting a lot of folks interested in the topic. So at the end of the day, whether it's true or not, it's certainly gotten a lot of attention, and I tend to think that is a net positive overall.
That's a great point. I've never heard that pointed out before. People just look at look at Nathan to sort of color between go outside the lines there. Say it's either true or it's false. Well, this is, Nathan likes to find what's positive about a person or a situation, and he was just able to do it right there and extract something positive out of Lazar, whether you believe him or not. More people are talking about it. Debs.
So This one's tough for me because I don't like to say negative things about people.
Hmm.
But I will say that I am aware of his background not being very solid, and I am aware of some of his friends and what their motives might have been for the story to get out. So that kind of changes my view of what he's presenting. But I want to clarify that when the Avro car was being made, people did come out and say, I saw, saucers inside with the US government, and no one believed them. So whether or not he saw something or how he worked there, who knows? Don't know. There might be some element of truth to what he's saying, is what I'm willing to say.
That's very fair, and I've always said to people, there's nothing wrong with saying, you know what, the story doesn't resonate with me. I don't believe it, and that's acceptable. Then rather going into launching, what some people will do is to launch into an entire tirade, tearing apart the person from top to bottom, which you really don't need to do. You can just say, I don't believe it, or I don't believe him. For me personally, looking at all of the evidence that I've heard, not looking at his character, because you don't know how many of these guys that work at classified facilities or at strip clubs and doing God knows what. It's not like they don't have regular lives, and you don't know what they do when they're not on site. What I would say is, in my opinion, there is enough evidence that he worked at a couple of the places that he worked. I know that, particularly at the time frame of the 80s, I know from my own college that I went to that if a federal uh, agent went in there and said, "Give me these records," they would disappear. If that's what they wanted to happen, and I'm not anybody here can tell you I'm not a conspiracy theorist. So I think that I have heard enough based on EG&G, based on some of the procedures for getting onboarded at a place like the Groom Lake Test Facility or Air Force Det 3, whatever it's called over there at Groom Lake. There's enough of that to lead me to believe that he probably worked there and he probably saw something. And you have people like George Knapp that brought it out there, and I don't think that he would make up a story to become famous or anything like that. I think he did a lot of background checking and figured out that this guy worked there. What he saw when he worked there, nobody knows. Unless you work there, you won't have any idea what he saw. Could he have fabricated what he saw there? Yes. But the fact that he worked there, and then when you listen to people like Rick Doty, who also worked there, and said that there is some, he did not get into the area where Bob supposedly worked, but that there is he did see some things that he could not explain in the couple of TDYs he did out there. So I think there's a good portion of that are true, his personal character notwithstanding. Let's get back to France.
So I will add something on that. So what I really like are timelines, and what always interested me is that Lazar came out in '82, if I remember well, and talking about Area 51. And before Area 51, what was the main interest of the UFO community when they were looking for crash retrievals?
Wright-Patterson, Roswell?
Wright-Patterson
Patterson?
Air Force
Yep.
Base.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
It was where the Blue Book project was hosted, including its secret part. And since then, the shift has always been on Area 51. And in intelligence, we call that a magic trick. You show a light here, so people don't look here.
Well, let's talk about that for a second. So, if you want to flight test something that you don't want eyes on, how would you go about doing that? Are you going to launch test flights out of suburban southern Ohio in Dayton? No, you can't do that. So you have to earmark a place that's so far out of the way, and then you have to restrict airspace around it so that as a commercial airliner, you can't even fly over this airspace. So you can't get there over the air, you can't get there on the ground, and that's where you would conduct any, I would want to test anything that flies is somewhere where it is very difficult for the public to see it, which is why when they talk about like the Calvine incident and they're, launching it out over Scotland where there's villages right around there, that's not something you would really want to do. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yes, but you are talking here about man-made crafts. Man-made crafts have a signature. They are real. You can see them. You can hear them. The crash retrieval units we are talking out, by design, are stealth beyond any extent that we have right now. And it was already stealth 70 years ago. So you can land them and use them whenever you want.
Well, if you have an area like Dayton, Ohio, for example, and you have a craft lift up to about 500-foot AGL, I mean, you have people for miles that can see whatever that is. Like let's say that he's telling the truth, and someone was able to test some sort of a saucer, and was able to. I don't know that happened. That's a whole discussion in itself, and we'll never know until we know, so to speak, whether they were able to put a human inside one of these craft and actually fly it, right?
No, but you had design at the time, but we are really looking towards it. You have the Russian thermoplan, and you have, as Deb said, the Avro. You could really make people think that it was UFOs. You even have Fravor describing events where he was doing nighttime flights above the desert, locating ground fires with a compass and going very low above them, then roaring the giants, so people thought it was UFOs. So it's a very long tradition.
Yeah, it's again, it depends if you understand what you're looking for and listening for. Some sort of a craft like that looks like a saucer, like an Avro car type of thing. Now what we're talking about is you have to have a turbine engine with a bunch of different ducted exhaust over there, sort of like if anyone's seen the video of Neil Armstrong testing out actually he wasn't testing, he was practicing in the lunar lander outside of Houston, and one of the rockets misfires and it kind of starts to arc over, and he pulls the ejection seat and he flies out of it. If you have something like that, the amount of fuel that you would need, I mean, basically you would have to have the entire saucer would have to be a fuel tank in order to be able to hover. It would make an enormous amount of noise with the technology that we have in order to be able to hover and be stable and go forward. So, I mean, it very much would fly like the way that a drone flies, except it would be a lot of speeder springs and flyweights to duct the thrust exhaust coming out of that engine, and it just would not do for what a UFO actually is. With the possible exception of the thing that Lonnie Zamora saw, that kind of, I mean, if it's exactly as he says, it kind of lends itself to something like that. But that's not, if I'm testing things like that, I don't want to be testing it over suburban Dayton, Ohio, but I would want to test it, something like that, out there in the middle of nowhere in the desert where I know people cannot get a good view of what I'm testing. And they picked a perfect spot to do that. And by the way, it's not the only spot. there's Dugway in Utah. There's China Lake in California. And then there's places that I don't even know about, probably several of them. So I think that is where you would test something, try to fly something if you were going to do that. And that's why. Whereas perhaps these bodies or pieces of these wreckages have been brought to a place where they have underground. I mean, Kirtland Air Force Base also has underground areas, and so does Wright-Patterson. That's where you would want to be able to do deep analysis on any sort of a biology that you captured or materials. Wright-Patterson would be perfect, but certainly not for flying and flight testing. Anyway.
Yeah. Well, and I think you both highlight just the challenge here in looking at the history of this topic, because it is muddied quite a bit by secrecy and subterfuge. And Baptiste, you point this out, I think, very clearly, that the tools and the tricks that the secret keepers have are they're pretty powerful, and they're pretty persuasive in the way they can use misdirection to get people looking in a different way. So it's not just steering public opinion, for example, it's steering the opinion of your adversaries, right? So if you can,
Absolutely.
say, as you said earlier, look over here and not over here, then things can be accomplished in secrecy to a greater degree. And I was wondering, kind of in light of that challenge there, unearthing the truth from a lot of of this information. Where do you see the role of AI kind of going forward in the future, piecing that apart, looking through that haystack of information and gleaning out some facts and truth in amidst all the different narratives there?
So the problem with AI is that it's very, very bad as truth. It's very, very bad as finding the truth. It's very good at telling you what you want to hear and guessing what you want to hear, but it's very, very bad at truth. And to be honest, we don't use AI in any of our software because we want to have open box of algorithms, because we want to know exactly how a piece of information landed there, why a piece of information landed there, and to be perfectly definite inside the software.
Right. I mean, it's only as good as the way that you incentivize the AI to look for certain things, right? So, but you could program it to say, look for specific fact patterns, look for an example that I've heard that I think is a good example of using AI in this instance. I agree with your general premise, but a good example of this is looking at old newspaper articles from a long time ago, before the world was rapidly connected in the way that it is now via the internet. And if you can look at different articles from different publications, from publications around the world, and if language is similar in those publications, that can tell you that there was a source perhaps that fed that information to those publications that the world at the time would not have known it came from a single source, because there wasn't that degree of interconnectedness. But the AI would be able to aggregate that, analyze that, and see that there may be a thread, so to speak, in this example, that ties those different pieces of information together. I totally agree, though. It's a tremendous challenge, right? Because we have to be careful how we are programming it, what kind of algorithmic bias we're putting into the AI, being aware of those biases. That's super important in everything that we're going to be doing with that kind of technology, is making sure that those software biases are front and center. So as we peruse and ingest that information, we know, it's going to be leaning and weighting information of a certain kind more than another kind. So to kind of take that with a little bit of a digital grain of salt, if you will.
And to circle about what we just said, the problem in that field is that you have disinformation. So you have false tracks of research that has been left behind to waste your time. So your artificial intelligence, if you design it for it, will find them, but it won't be able to know if it's a good track or a false track. And you will be forced to do that work anyway.
Yeah, I think what Nathan might say, though, if you respond, Nathan, is that it could shorten your time frame if it could eliminate some possibilities and give you places to look.
Yeah, absolutely. If it can shorten that task of collection, right, and it can say, hey, we analyzed X number of different pieces of information, documentation, publications, etc. We found this frequency of information that I was looking for. That may help me in understanding the degree to which that particular claim, for example, at least made it into publication or made it into documentation. I still have to, I think this is the valid point here, I still have to judge whether or not that is in fact true. Just because it appears everywhere doesn't make it true. And I think that's one of the biggest things that we've all learned in the last decades about our media. Just because it shows up in all of our media doesn't make it actually a true thing. Right, we have to use a certain degree of discernment there.
What?
Yeah, right. It just highlights, I think, the tremendous challenge that we have here about getting to the truth. Right? Who, what, where does the information come from in order for the public to say this is true?
So I think I can't talk much about it because it's just on the drawing board. But we are designing a tool that is very specific to gather quotes from people, locate the quotes, and corroborate the quotes. So, for example, that would be a much more useful tool for a journalist than an artificial intelligence able to look for just patterns of words. Because then when you have 2 or 3 times the same quote that is corroborated, you are pretty sure it's true. And you just need to recheck one time and you're sure it's true. And you don't need to rely on the context. It's just plain words in quotes. So that's one of the tools we are working on. And I'm not anti-AI. It's just that we are very cautious about it because we are in a field where you have literal information that are made as weapons to destroy your thought logic.
Okay, I think that's great. I'm glad that you are, because you should be, right? It's a powerful and it can potentially be a dangerous tool. So I think that's very smart to be cautious there.
If there's one thing that I figured out about Baptiste in these 2 visits with us, he's smart.
Thank you so much, DJ. No, I have to invite you to dinner. Come to France, Paris.
I would love to. It's one of my favorite countries. The UK and France. I just get such a great feeling every time I'm there. We have a couple questions, but I want to get Deb in there first, and then we'll go to Michael's questions from the chat and Julie's questions. So please go ahead, Miss Deb.
Yeah, so I wanted to speak to this concept of truth and how people respond to information really quick, because as we know, not that long ago, maybe about a year ago, Lockheed just put this craft outside to be photographed that looked like a saucer. About a couple of years ago, a craft was actually going down the Beltway in, I believe, Maryland or Virginia that looked like a saucer. And people were just like, oh, okay, well, it's obviously not going to be one, right? So what if we're just kind of guinea pigs? Like sometimes I wonder about that. The CIA openly admitted they told people there were UFOs at one point in time to cover up one of their projects. And there's an article about that if anyone wants to look at it. So it does make me wonder, like, how are we going to actually get the truth and believe the truth and digest that? Because so many tricks have been done. So many well, here's our saucer kind of tricks have been done too.
You've asked him a big question. Go ahead, Baptiste.
I think it was a talk between Corbell and Knapp where they were debating. They imagined that they were talking to the military and trying to convince them of opening the doors and talking about UFOs openly. And the national security guy answered, but what are you going to do with that piece of information? For you, just for your curiosity. For us, it's a threat. So, and I would use the same argument. Why are you looking toward intelligence that are literally paid to lie, or the military that are literally paid to not talk? Hire scientists, create a hedge fund, hire scientists, fund them their tools, they will find the answer.
In theory, the problem is to be able to capture it, and because the DoD already, and obviously not only the DoD, the NRO, NASA has sensors. There's different satellite agencies that have satellites that can see things that and pick things up. And there's NASA has a massive radar in space. So that's the problem, is that they've already funded and have all the sensors, and there's so much money involved. I think that's the challenge that Avi Loeb and his crew are coming up with, is fielding sensors. And proliferating them. It's just a lot of money. I'm not saying it's impossible, but I think that's a challenge.
I think that if half the community spent the energy they did talking about Lazar and encouraging the Galileo project, we will advance much faster.
No, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. Let me get a couple of questions in here that we have from Michael. He asked first if you've ever, and we kind of asked you at this beginning, and it's probably before Michael logged on, but he says, Baptiste, have you had a life-changing experience?
Every day is a life-changing experience. You just
hard,
need to
baby.
live and to breathe.
He's damn right, man. But yeah, he hasn't seen a UFO, Michael, if that's what you're asking. We asked him that in the beginning. It wasn't an event. It was a question from one of his students that started this all, because like any great teacher, he says, I don't have all the answers, but I'll find you the answer. And that's kind of like how I'm at work. If somebody asks me something, I'm like, something I need to know or should know, I'll be like, I don't know. I will find you the answer, or I'll find someone
It
that
would
does.
be unfair of me to let you say that I didn't see a UFO.
Ooh, okay.
I won't
Let's
say more.
backtrack. Okay. You did?
I answered that question.
You did. Okay, you didn't. You did. You did answer this question. Somebody, maybe I'm missing this. You did answer this question?
Yes, I said that it wouldn't be fair from me to let you say that I didn't see a UFO.
Okay,
He used
so
double negatives, so he's saying
Okay,
yes,
got it.
yes, he saw one.
he did. Okay. Well, you don't have to share it if you don't want to share it. It's okay. This question right there. What do you think about Skinwalker Ranch? Are you willing to go there and be a ranch hand for a couple weeks?
Oh, I would pay to be there. I'm a very good guinea pig. No, I would love to go there, to be there. And I have a full brain scan made by one of the best hospital in France to check out and compare if I have brain damage afterwards. So there's no
Okay.
problem from me. I will sign any clause you want. I would love to. And from and if I say that is because every context that I trust told me that what they were doing was true.
Okay, and so what do you think about that phenomenon? Have you developed any sort of hypotheses about the origins or origin, if it's a single one? What is your leading theory on what you think's
Well, it's not even a theory, it's an idea. I like the idea of past Chernobyl. Like something crashed, but it was a very, very nasty crash. Like very, and we have some reports of that. Usually when you have something that crashed, either it just explodes in 1,000 pieces or it stays in one block. But you have a few reports where you have a ship that breaks in half and you have the two pieces that are separated. And I think that that's type of disaster that could have happened, and that explains a lot of power spikes, leaks of radiation, that kind of stuff.
I love that theory. I mean, that makes a lot of sense. Plus, obviously, the physical, what would I call it? The barrier that they encountered in the mesa, where they suspected it was dome shaped by the reaction of the drill bit after they drilled horizontally into the mesa. So that's interesting, and it's a great theory. Julie asks, our chat moderator, Jules says, this basically can go for Baptiste or any of the folks here. Any news about the big Right Pat meetings with the big wigs that just happened recently? Do you know anything, Baptiste? I haven't.
So I was looking for a reference for you. For the Skinwalker Ranch, there is a very, very good book that has been written, and it predates the Skinwalker Ranch. It's called Stalker by the brothers Strugatsky, and it's a Russian story, and it really describes the Skinwalker Ranch. So I would encourage everybody that is interested in the Skinwalker Ranch to read that book. And I'm sorry I didn't hear the question because I was looking for the reference.
No, it's okay. Julie's asking if you have, or either Nathan or Deb has any info on the intel or the sort of higher official meeting that was held at Right Pat recently. If you heard anything about that, results of that.
As far as I know, it was related to the big leaks of information from military intelligence on a Minecraft server, and not related to UFOs. But what was really interesting is that the senator of the state then later said that it was a very sobering briefing he encountered, which is pretty scary when you think that it is military intelligence from the first power of Earth.
Did you hear anything, Nathan, Deb?
I heard that it was also about that Reddit leak, and that's what the focus was, the issue of security and confidentiality. Or, yeah, the leak issue is what I heard.
Yeah, I think it was the Discord leaks. Yeah, so we said 3 different things, but I think it was Discord, where that young intelligence officer was basically showboating on Discord and sharing a bunch of sensitive secrets.
But given the situation, we can be almost sure that they talk about the Chinese balloons at least.
You would think, right? Which I think is still an interesting topic that hasn't really been resolved at least in the public, and as far as I understand, not been resolved to the satisfaction of the Congress either. At least based on the public statements that they've made, they still don't really know much more than the public knows about whatever these objects were that were shot down. So, we can certainly say we think they were prosaic. We don't have any reason to believe that they weren't, but nevertheless, it's a little bit odd that we can get a cockpit video of a Reaper drone or something that was gassed over in the Baltic or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
They released that like ASAP, but they won't release shooting a sidewinder at a balloon.
There are two objects that are very strange in the February shutdowns, and Roscoe Chart had the same information. He said so publicly. So there is something very weird that is happening around that February cases.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to note about that is that it was really interesting how quickly UAP was used to discuss that, though. So it wasn't just like we put that title on it; they did.
Yeah, I agree with Nathan. We don't have any evidence to say that it was something other than something prosaic or something that was launched by a global power competition nation like obviously Russia or China. But I can totally understand why they would not report the results of what they found. That is, in my mind, that's completely consistent with what they would do, which is to say, we haven't found it yet. We're looking for it. We don't know what it was. Because once you define it, depending upon what it was, then you can get into this discussion about UAP writ large. But once you define, okay, yes, we found it, and this is what it was, well, then whoever launched it, if it was one of these nations, and we think it was, we don't know for sure, because common sense would say that if this were another non-human intelligence craft, we're probably not going to be able to shoot it down with an F-22. The evidence, given by, everybody from folks that Graham Rendell has studied up until 1976 with the Iranian pilot, or Iranian pilot, let me say that correctly. We probably couldn't take down something that was of a non-human intelligence, I would think, without maybe a very specific type of weapon. So given that, it probably was human-made, and they probably don't want to characterize it for the public to let those other intelligence services know how they've characterized it and how they've defined it.
Just for the sake of the argumentation, I would oppose that they do crash.
Sure. No, but if the times when people say they've shot at them hasn't been successful, I've heard of another through somebody that would know about a different aircraft that fired on one that's not as distant as 1976, and it was able to move out of the way predictably before rounds collided with it. So I'm just taking a stab here, just what I think.
I mean, all we can really do is
agree.
speculate, right?
I absolutely agree. No missile ever touched one or managed to shut down one. They love that missiles, but it doesn't mean that one time they won't find one that is already very damaged and isn't able to defend itself.
Yes, that's true. I mean, it happened in Independence Day, so so it is possible. But their response is, I believe, is consistent with what I would have expected them to do and say. That part of it is what I can. How I would expect them to characterize, which is, hey, we weren't able to find it, and when we do, we'll let you know, and that'll be in probably 2097. So, anyway, let's put it up on the screen, UAP check.
Yep. All right, hold on a second here. Here we go. Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, we have the full website if you want.
Oh, please, yeah.
I send it to you in the private chat. So
Awesome.
It's just the backbone. It's a build we are working on, but it will give you an idea.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, if you could,
I got you.
grab that. There it is. It is http colon. Is that forward slash UAPcheck.com. That's awesome, man.
You can bring in on
Really,
the screen. I can show you around if you want.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I think you can share screen if you want.
go for it, brother.
Um,
So Baptiste is about to show us UAP check, this new tool, UAP reporting. How would you characterize it if you were to say UAP check is a?
It's a platform. It's a platform. It's an all-encompassing platform about everything you need about UAPs. So there is 3 different parts inside the project. The first part is the news part, which will be the first launch in 2 weeks. What you see there is the backbone of it. So on the left part, you have a news aggregator. So it just links toward reliable pieces of content related to UAPs. It's automatically updated every hour. On the right part, we will have our own editorial board that will be publishing more in-depth analysis about the subject and fact-checking other pieces of information that are not that reliable. Then we will have, at the end of summer, the UAP check software that will be the reporting software for the witness. And then so it would be in January, we will have the cultural part. So we want to organize art exhibits, conferences about UAPs, and to expand the subject towards the population. We really want to brief the population en masse on UAPs. That's the basic idea.
This is it's very robust, very comprehensive in everything you're trying to do, right, Nathan?
It looks great, and the screen that you showed reminded me you've been writing for the Debrief. You've been putting articles out from them, and to what degree, can you talk to the collaborative effort there with the Debrief and the UAP check? Is there one?
We are very good friends. It's just that the Debrief is a general platform. It talks about everything about news, technologies, etc. We'll be very focused about UAPs. And as a teacher, I'm also a defense teacher, so it's a bit of a weird thing, but in France, we have what we call defense class. So it's class that are made with the army. So I have double job as teacher in defense and in art. And as I can't talk English when I'm not too tired, sorry. I started to write articles about the French defense because we have the same problem of barrier of language with our army. So I wanted to give an opinion of what we could do in France toward the military, and specifically in the areas of UAPs. So here you have an article about higher airspace. So that basically the limit between the maximum altitude of a plane and the limit of space. And that's the area where we, in the Nimitz 2004 event, you had a rain of UFOs that was witnessed by Kevin Day.
Yeah, like 80,000 feet. I mean, I don't think there's an aircraft that could get up that high with a traditional turbine fan type engine. I don't even think. I don't know if you guys have looked into that. I don't know what the complete total ceiling is, but man, 80,000 feet. I mean, you wouldn't be able to do a whole lot. So if you could get up that, you're hanging on the engines with a high angle of attack.
Mm-hmm.
Not a lot of air to compress, anyway.
Oh, there is another thing I can show you. We
Please.
just finished the prototype of one of our exhibits. So I asked my students to create an art exhibit. And we worked with the UNESCO to create artworks. So on the left are the works of my students. The theme was extraterrestrial landscapes. And then with the UNESCO, I offered that for each artworks of one of my students, we would be exhibiting one of their art pieces in their collection. So that we just ended that art exhibit. That's one of the prototypes we are working on regarding cultural outreach about that subject.
That's awesome.
It's also so cool that you are both dual hatting, where you're teaching art and you're teaching defense, and it's just so cool when people are able to straddle these areas instead of you can do one but not the other, because it's just important to being a well-rounded person, is a sort of appreciation of all these things. So I can
Yes.
only imagine what kind of paintings you might have you've done or something. So that's great.
It's tongues, pink tongues. No, but it's really something that we push inside the project, that we don't think that only one field will have the answer. We need a transdisciplinary push to find something reliable, even as information. If you have radar data, you need to have ground observer data from human intelligence to confirm that the radar isn't spoofed. So we really need to expand the field of research on UAPs.
Yes, we need, absolutely, you need to be able to leverage all these things so it's irrefutable. Whereas now it sort of opens the door for the sort of basement, debunkers to be able to say, "Oh, this isn't real." Well, I mean, the more of these kinds of things, like you say, when you can have corroborative data from different sources, and probably on that Nimitz aspect, there's probably a significant, as Lou says, there's a lot more than what we haven't seen, other than just Kevin Day's radar, the E2 Hawkeye's air traffic control radar, and then the aircraft's spoofing of its radar, plus the visuals that they got. That there's more than that, so I'm sure they have some
Absolutely.
geospatial. Anyway, tell people where they can find you, Mr. Baptiste.
Oh, it will be on Twitter at Baptiste_Fry. That will be my main presence on the internet.
And so, and when you guys do end up having those conferences or whatever over in France, and you need two people to introduce people on stage, Nathan and I are available. We will get the crowd fired up. We'll talk about the previous guest and the next guest, and bring them on, baby. Yeah.
That's how we do it.
All right.
And if I may, if any member of your audience or yourself, gentlemen and miss, want to enlist and write a piece of article for us, you are more than welcome.
Oh, wow. Thank you.
Cool. All right. Yeah. Let me see if something comes to mind, and I'll make sure I put it through Nathan's editorial process before I send it to you.
Stringent editorial process.
Yes.
Yes.
Now, we really want that platform to be open to anyone. So really reach out to us. We are open to every contact. We are not blinding anyone.
Wow.
I was gonna say I love what you're doing, but let's go with Cabby goodbyes, and then I'll get to a little bit of that in my closing. Go ahead, Debs.
So again, thank you so much for everything that you are doing. I'm really excited by a comment you made earlier about disclosure. I feel like we should have a giant international competition and see who gets the gold medal in disclosure.
We are preparing something. We are preparing something.
Yes, let's do it. Let's make it an Olympics disclosure event. So thank you very much again, and please come again.
Oh, thank you very much.
And here with the discus throw is Nathan.
Yeah, we exactly. Let me spin real quick. We are big fans of Baptiste, and it's just great to have you back with us. We are watching what you're doing very closely and rooting for you. And I agree with Deb. I mean, if we can just put our collective will together to trying to crack this, there's not a lot we can't accomplish once the world gets united in trying to solve something. Amazing things can happen. So I'm hoping that's what occurs, and I'm hoping that in that effort it will unite us in a way that maybe we've not been united in a long time, or maybe ever, which would be really terrific. So thank you. We'll keep in touch, and hopefully have you back again soon to give us an update.
Anytime you want.
Yeah, brother. Like you said earlier, you alluded to it. If you're part of the UFO Twitter community and you're thinking about that, you want to take a shot. You really want to take a shot at somebody in the community. Leave that shot aside and just use that energy towards figuring it out. What can you do to move it forward? And Deb also basically spoke to that as well, and so did Baptiste. I want to thank you for including Cab in this and reaching out to me to tell me about this exciting thing, which I immediately went and told the cabbies all about. It is very exciting, and what you're doing for the community is gigantic. There's something about not just talking, it's doing. Yeah. And thank goodness that these other folks that have developed this software found you because you do have a great face in the community. So, and like I said, if you have other folks that are from France that want to engage with us that speak English, that's our only requirement until I get a French Canadian on the show, and then we can get somebody to translate. But it's
I'm
an
trying to,
absolute.
but the language barrier is a real problem for us.
No, I no, I know. Not everybody needs to speak English, but if there is somebody, that's our only sort of limitation, and I say it
Yeah,
that way. It's not a
absolutely.
requirement; it's just a limitation. And but anybody that you know that you trust that you think would like to speak with us, we
Sure.
are game. We want this to be open to many other countries and as many as we could get. Quite frankly, we would like to get them on our schedule and get their thoughts and opinions and people that they've known, talked to, and what's happened culturally and nationally for them. So thank you very much, Baptiste. We really, really do appreciate it. Go and check him out on Twitter. Give us a like and a subscribe. One love to everybody out there. And for Debs, for Nathan, for Baptiste, this is DJ saying peace out. One love. We'll see you down the road. And as always, we're wondering what's up around the bend.
Subscribe. Subscribe.